The land we call Kuwait today has a very long and interesting story that begins thousands of years ago. Even though it is a small country, its location on the edge of the Arabian Gulf made it a very important place for people who traveled by sea and land. A long time ago, in the ancient days, people lived on an island called Failaka, which is near the coast of Kuwait. These people were part of a great civilization. They traded goods with people from faraway places like Mesopotamia and India. They were very good at sailing, and they knew how to use the stars to find their way across the water. Life was simple, but busy, because the sea provided fish, and the location provided a way to meet many different cultures.
For a long time, the area was quiet and lived under the influence of different empires. However, the modern history of Kuwait really began to change about 300 years ago. In the early 1700s, a group of people called the Bani Utbah moved from the middle of the desert to the coast. They were looking for a better place to live, where there was water and a way to make a living. They found a natural harbor, which was perfect for boats. They named the place Kuwait, which comes from a word that means a small fort. They built a small town and started to work as traders and pearl divers. The Al-Sabah family became the leaders of this new community. They were very wise and worked hard to make sure the town was safe and that everyone could trade fairly.
The people of Kuwait became very famous for their skills on the sea. Because the land was very dry and not good for farming, they looked to the ocean for everything. They built beautiful wooden boats called dhows. They used these boats to travel all over the world. Some men would go out into the deep water to dive for pearls. This was very dangerous and difficult work. They had to hold their breath and dive deep down to find oysters. If they were lucky, they would find a beautiful pearl inside. These pearls were sold to people in Europe and India for a lot of money. This is how Kuwait became a wealthy and famous trading center long before anyone knew about oil. The city grew larger, and they built a big wall around it to protect the people from enemies in the desert.
In the late 1800s, the world was changing. Big empires like the British and the Ottomans were very powerful. The leaders of Kuwait, especially Sheikh Mubarak the Great, wanted to make sure Kuwait stayed independent and safe. In 1899, he signed an agreement with the British. The British promised to protect Kuwait from outside attacks, and in return, Kuwait agreed to work closely with them. This was a very important moment because it helped Kuwait stay a separate and special place while other areas were being taken over by large empires. During this time, the port of Kuwait was full of life. You could see people from many different countries buying and selling spices, cloth, and wood. However, the middle of the 20th century brought big challenges. The pearl industry began to fail because people in other countries learned how to grow pearls in farms. This made the natural pearls of Kuwait less valuable. The people became poor, and life was very hard for a while. But then, something amazing happened. Explorers found oil deep under the ground in Kuwait. At first, they didn't know how much there was, but they soon realized it was a huge amount. The first shipment of oil left Kuwait in 1946. This changed everything. The money from the oil was used to build schools, hospitals, and modern roads. The small town with the mud wall quickly turned into a beautiful modern city with tall buildings and bright lights. In 1961, Kuwait became fully independent from the British. It was a time of great pride. Kuwait created its own constitution and a parliament where people could talk about how to run the country. It was one of the first countries in the region to do this. For many years, Kuwait was a leader in art, education, and business. People from all over the world came to work there because the country was growing so fast. The leaders used the wealth to make sure every citizen had a good life, a home, and healthcare. It was often called the Pearl of the Gulf because it was so bright and successful. But history is not always easy. In 1990, a neighboring country called Iraq invaded Kuwait. It was a very sad and scary time for the people. Many people had to leave their homes, and the city was damaged. However, the whole world came together to help Kuwait. A large group of international forces joined to push the invaders out. In early 1991, Kuwait was free again. The people worked very hard to fix their country. They cleaned up the oil fires that had been started and rebuilt the shops and houses. This event showed how strong and brave the people of Kuwait are. They proved that they love their land and will always work to keep it safe and free.
After the war, Kuwait focused on the future. They continued to use their wealth to help other countries and to build a strong economy that does not just depend on oil. They invested in technology and energy. Today, Kuwait is a place where old traditions meet the new world. You can still see the traditional dhow boats in the harbor, but you also see some of the tallest and most modern towers in the world. The people still value their history of pearl diving and sea trading, and they teach their children about the hard work of their grandfathers. Kuwait remains a very important country in the world because it helps keep peace and works as a bridge between different nations. The story of Kuwait is a story of a small place with a very big heart. From a tiny fort by the sea to a modern and wealthy nation, the journey has been long. The people have faced many hardships, like the end of the pearl trade and the invasion, but they always come back stronger. They are proud of their Al Sabah leaders who have guided them for hundreds of years. As they look toward the future, they continue to be a center for culture and business in the Middle East. The history of Kuwait shows that even a small country can do great things if its people are united and hardworking. It is a history of survival, sea travel, and the discovery of a resource that changed the world forever. When we look back at the 1,000 years of history, we see that Kuwait was always a place of welcome. It was a place where different paths crossed. Whether it was a Greek soldier on Failaka Island, or a merchant from London, or a sailor from India, Kuwait was a spot on the map where people met to share ideas and goods. This spirit of trade and friendship is still alive today. The city is filled with people from many lands, and the markets are still busy with the sounds of people talking and trading. This long history is why Kuwait is such a unique and respected country today. It has a memory that goes back to the desert and the sea, and a vision that reaches far into the sky. As the years go by, the story of Kuwait continues to be written by its young people. They go to universities and learn about science and the arts, carrying the same curiosity their ancestors had when they sailed across the ocean. The country continues to protect its environment and its history, making sure that the old ways are not forgotten while the new ways are embraced. The desert sands and the blue waters of the Gulf remain the backdrop for this incredible journey. Kuwait stands as a symbol of how a community can grow and flourish through cooperation and courage. It is a story that started with a small fort and became a shining example of progress and peace for everyone to see.